Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Charles Barfield. This is Kingdom Revelations, and we got a lot to talk about tonight. And welcome to the show
We do.
again. Surely I'm going to be joined by Greg Bink in a few minutes. But as always, let me start off with my commentary. We've been watching patiently the Nolan Wells case, a national case. Again, one black young man, 18 years old, in the state of Mississippi, went on a boat ride with three other white friends that they knew each other. And the three white kids came back on Earth or to their destination. Then the one black kid did not come back. And every day there are new allegations, new revolving facts that keep leaking out. The suppression of that evidence and the lying and deception from the people that's in charge and know more or not doing what they ought to do. Now, we do know from last week when we talked about these issues that there's a photograph, a very alarming photograph that showed Nolan Wells and those three white teenagers that were friends of his at a pool party. At a pool party. If you look at our screen here, you got Nolan and those three kids, and we blotted out their face on purpose. But in the event, all four left together on this boat ride. And then last week when we talked about this story, one of the white kids has a mother that's a local judge in a jurisdiction where this death occurred. The influence of that judge is going to be the determining factor influencing this case. One way or the other, in my opinion. I said it then, and I still say the same thing. And one of the problems I'm having since we was on air last week was that this judge said that, or at least implied that Nolan Wells had left, decided to stay back while the other three white kids came back home on the boat. Well, we know that's not true now, based upon that photograph. That photograph surely is a day after the fact, which is a day later than what we originally thought. And it showed that they're all at a pool party. Nolan Wells and all three of the kids are at a party at a swimming pool incident where he's clearly available. You can see that all four of them are there. Second disturbing facts to me is that we now know that the cell phone of Nolan Wells was, if they said that Nolan decided to stay behind, but yet his cell phone went before him. So his cell phone was tracking. Many people know if you got a cell phone, you can use another device to track that cell phone. That happened to me recently when I was traveling to Abacoa, the state of Florida. I got to Gainesville and had lost my phone. I was able to track it and realize I had left it at my house. So you can do that. So that's what happened with Nolan Wells' phone. It was tracked, and most disturbing than that, the evidence now presented itself is that there was some information deleted from his phone. Well, I don't know why or whoever deleted those messages. I don't know if they forgot about technology is so advanced now that you can recover deleted information. So all texts that they deleted, we will find out the answer to this. But as I said last week, there seemed to be a inference of guilt by certain actions and inaction that you do in terms of a criminal investigation. And then we find out that all the all the three white kids and their parents immediately eliminated all social media accounts and all kind of accounts before it was discovered that Nolan Wells was even left behind or even dead. Why you need to do all these things if you're so innocent? We'll find out these answers. I'm pretty confident that Ben Crump and his team will find out the answers to the questions. But one of the things that disturbs me is I'm hearing people from all sides, even some black people. I take issue with that saying tends to make a logical assumption that just because being Crump and the Reverend Al Sharpton involved, there is something racial immediately involved. No, they have a right to do what they need to do. Ben Crump was contacted by the parents of Nolan Wells. He is a professional. He has a job to do, and he's doing his job. Now, you know, you can disagree on certain things, but we come to a point in society where we're too offended too easily, and we got to always keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is this: we have four young teenagers three white, one black, went on a boat trip. They supposed to be friends. Well, the black kid ended up dead, and the white kids are not talking. They're not even. They didn't have the humanity to even tell the parents that he was dead, nor did they give them any kind of information. So, if you or the parent or parents are Nolan Wells, how would you feel if your son was on a boat ride with some kids and your son died, and those same kids don't even tell you that your son is dead or missing? You find out from the local sheriff knocking at a weird hour of the day at your home. So this doesn't pass the rat test, the rat smell test. So I'm confident Ben Crump and his crew will get to the bottom of this. Also, we have the Florida judge here rebuking the Department of Justice, this Trump DOJ, for essentially lying and putting a 1.8 billion fraud on the court with his IRS slush fund, or however you want to call it, payment to himself in the court, saying that there was a manipulation of the court, bad faith. Another issue we want to talk about, the ICE killing. A Houston man, Lorenzo Salgado Arenado, was killed by ICE last week. But breaking today, another ICE killing, shooting in the state of Maine that's breaking as we was ready to come on air. And then our next and final issue we're going to deal with, our podcast Power of God section, deal with Conor McGregor and the Matt Holloway fight. Deception, blind, honesty. Where's honesty and character going in America? Because here we have a fight between Conor McGregor, and he got paid a whole lot of money, millions of dollars. And 69 seconds into the fight, allegedly he blew out an ACL. You trained for this. Did you not know whether or not he was injured or not? Did you not know that? So we're going to talk about these issues. I'm going to bring in my good debate partner, Greg Fink. And Greg, come on in and welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, doing good, doing good. God is great.
Yes.
Greg, the Nolan Wells case keep evolving, new facts, new data. I got an issue with this judge here, this local judge here, who's kind of, in my view, has influenced the deputies and the whole investigation. We still don't have the, that local coroner's office has not released the autopsy yet. And then we have another delay in the autopsy with Ben Crump and his crew because there was some flight issues from flying the body back from Mississippi to DC for his medical team, to kind of examine the body. So we still don't have either autopsies out yet. I think in time we'll get that, and be able to see kind of what's going on. There's some preliminary information, and I don't know if it's information evidence at this point, that the Mississippi is kind of saying it was a quote unquote potential drowning, which I believe that this is why they're kind of not releasing the autopsy yet, because that's going to be a very hard medical sale to prove that, based upon the picture that I referenced earlier, that picture that Nolan was at the swimming pool with those three other kids.
Right.
It's going to be a very tricky medical explanation. I don't want to prejudge it right now because I want to see what the autopsy say, but it's going to be interesting from a medical standpoint whether or not the water was in his lungs or outside his lungs. That's going to
Yeah, I
determine whether or
mean,
not he died before or after,
exactly.
whether or not he was killed and then they put him into the water and he was found in shallow waters. That's very concerning to me from a technical evidentiary standpoint. So
Right.
it's going to be very interesting how they square this up.
It's gonna be really interesting. I mean, I think right now we're still at the genesis stage of this whole debacle here, and as far as the investigation goes and how everything's going to pan out. But I do think the judge shouldn't be influencing anybody on anything. I mean, the investigation needs to play out objectively and honestly the way it needs to do in every case like this. And the fact that everybody's pointing fingers and saying that the attorneys for the family are illegitimate attorneys, or they're in it for their own personal greed or their own personal gain, or basically they're trying to make it more theater than they are about fighting justice. I mean, you're gonna have haters like that in every world. But the reality here is that, Ben Crump is a good attorney, and Al Sharpton He's old, but he's still a good attorney. I mean, and yeah, he might be more of a showboat guy about the issues, but I think a lot of it actually has to do with building the right kind of narrative around a case. And you as a lawyer know, yeah, a lot of these cases are won and lost built on how they define themselves. And if you let the other side define you, everything else, and you let the other side define the evidence or basically distort the evidence or pervert it, and because we're talking about the jury is who you have to convince one way or the other. And so, I mean, it's a huge messaging thing based off of facts, and that's one thing people don't really understand the details of all that. And yeah, I mean, it looks like it might be a game. It looks like it might be something that's very impatient, but it's also the way it is, and that's the way it works. And this is a horrible situation, and the truth needs to come out. Period. And the autopsy, as it being delayed, it needs to be done right. It's ready to get it done. If it takes longer to get it done right, then they're just halfway do it, and how they're originally doing it, and not do a thorough investigation or a thorough autopsy. Then, if that's the case, then that's a good thing, I think, as long as it's done right. If it's done corruptly and they're doing a long time frame here to hide the stuff, then that's a whole different story.
Well, Greg, you remember we talked about this last week when we talked about how the one of the white kids' parent is a mother, is a judge, and
Exactly. Yeah.
she published a written statement basically telling everybody to redirect their thoughts and concerns to Nolan Wells' parents.
Yeah.
But you didn't inform the parents that Nolan Wells was dead.
Exactly.
You didn't tell them about the cell phone. You didn't none of your kid or her kid or
No.
other kids. No one delivered a cell phone. No one did anything
Yeah.
to help.
Yeah, they're worried about a public statement to cover the butts of their kids and did not do a private statement to the family first,
Right. Yeah. Very bizarre. Very bizarre. And
which is
sometimes,
very disrespectful too.
yes,
Take all
very
the bizarreness out of it is a horrible disrespect of the family.
yes, yes. It's like there was no humanity, and for her to be a judge, an experienced and seasoned judge, you will have some just professional courtesy of how you're supposed to govern. She's supposed to be a professional, but everything it seems like to me, what she's doing is cover up mode. Cover up mode. No humanity, just protect my son and his friends. And there was a lack of decency, the lack of common sense to just even say, hey, your son's no longer here. I mean, that blow, Greg, I think comes a little bit better. It is never going to be accepted from anyone when you lose a child or any loved one. But it's a little bit better come from someone you know than the police.
Yeah,
It's like, I
exactly.
mean, it's the level of shock when a police and that you see a police officer in a police car in that uniform and they come to your door and you didn't call them, you are in a permanent somewhat of a state of shock. And when they release that, the ultimate news that your child no longer here, and it's like I can it don't take a rocket scientist to be able to understand how difficult that is to receive that kind of news.
Yeah, I know. And the fact that they just let it go.
Yeah, yeah, and they didn't do anything, and so I think that until we get more of the autopsies on this to get more medical proof, I think the medical proof is going to cement the factual evidence, and it's going to line up in what we call it a lot of theory of the case is going to be established once the autopsy report and both because I'm interested in seeing just what the state of Mississippi is going to be saying, but I'm also curious to see what the professionals medical team from Ben Crump is going to say what were the cause of death. And so that's going to be interesting. So we'll obviously, viewers of the public, we're in a way to see kind of approach and that's what we have to do that. But meanwhile, so let's transition to another big issue. Today, a federal judge rebuked the Department of Justice, this Trump, the DOJ, and his lawyers. And incidentally, one of the lawyers that were rebuked is the acting the Department of DOJ attorney who's trying to have the job full time and permanently. So that's going to be very, very interesting because he's said to have some hearings on his ability to serve in that capacity. Now, so again, we're talking about this $1.8 billion IRS. Some people call it a slush fund. I call it
Big
reparations.
slush fund, yeah.
Yeah, but it depends on how you see it. But regardless, it's a 1.8 billion with the big fund that this president unilaterally authorized for a group for himself first. It was so-called a settlement was he wanted like he sued for $10 billion for himself, and then he realized that wasn't going over too well public, so he reversed and said that let's get to 1.8 billion or 17.77 billion for the January 6th criminals that tried to overthrow the government. So that's supposed to be what this supposed to be for. Well, the
Right.
judge scored him in a 57-page legal opinion. And, I was reading this and I'm like, Alcaro 50, the number 56. And I was like, this judge, of course, just kind of draw on the court, manipulating the court, the language he used. And I was like, this 56-page review would remind me of Lawrence Taylor, the great Lawrence Taylor in football, number 56. Like how
Mhm.
he
Right.
terrorized defense. That's what she basically did to these lawyers. But Greg, what's more important that she rebuked these lawyers in the sense that she recommended the Florida bar take disciplinary action to penalize and possibly disbar these two of these lawyers that worked on this case. And I'm like, finally, I don't understand, and many of my lawyer friends from all over in different states don't seem to understand how all this illegal activity is going on and the lawyers are allowing it. And why have none of them lawyers been disbarred yet? It shocks the conscience of every decent lawyer. And I'm like, finally, with so many different cases that these lawyers are allowing these politicians to do these kind of things. And it's finally obvious that this case was like a conspiracy and it's like a defrauding of court, which I've been saying on this show. Because there's no legitimacy in bringing forth a so-called settlement like that. Then again, portion of it was that he was going to have immunity claim against him and his sons for future or past IRS issues. Are you kidding me?
Well,
But
it's,
I'm
he's covering up the family. That's what family does.
yeah, that's what monster family does, Greg. They protect each other,
No,
Greg.
that's just being a little blanket there on, name calling, okay? That's not very nice. Okay, I mean, he's looking out for his kids and their future well-being to make sure they're not prosecuted.
Greg, why would you be
There's nothing wrong
prosecuted
with
if you got
that.
to
I
do
mean, as a
anything?
parent, parents do that.
Yeah,
Do
parents supposed
what?
to do that. But we're not listen, but we're not talking about parents who got kids getting like billions of dollars from tax bills, money from
Well,
businesses and
I
stuff,
mean, we
and
got yeah,
no
but
big
once again,
contract.
you're isolating the Trump family just for that, and there's thousands of families like that.
Well, I don't want to get to that this week,
Probably
but
1%.
because I think these issues we're talking about now have a lot of more instantaneous weight. But we're gonna
They
maybe
do,
maybe
yeah.
maybe later in the week on the next show we're gonna deal with Hunter Biden and his victory. He won like a $1 million lawsuit against some of the people who have been defaming him. But that's for another day. But
Really.
let's yeah, he did. But
That'll
but
pay off
let's
a little bit of his debt.
yeah, yeah. Well, he got a lot of debt he need to take care of because
He does. Probably a lot more than $1,000,000.
yes. But anyway, but it does say that he did win that. So I mean, it was a
Yeah.
civil
Well, that's good.
litigation. Yeah.
At least
But
you won
anyway,
something.
so what's your take on this? Where this judge rebuking the DOJ and Greg, keep in mind that
Well, I
the
mean, I
DOJ.
go back to the same thing with the other judge. I mean, these judges keep rebuking and keep, telling people how to investigate or not investigate, whereas Nolan Wells or the Trump family or this or that. I mean, these activist judges are just starting to get a lot more activist here lately.
Well, I know. I think the judge is following the law and not being
Well,
cowards. I
that's a
mean,
good
that's what
thing.
you're supposed to do as a judge.
That's
You're
true.
supposed to
Yeah, but you're
follow the
supposed to
law.
enforce the law, not change it or encourage it or
That's
position
what they
it.
were doing, enforcing the law. I mean, some of this stuff is like you can build seventh grade understanding. It's not complicated. It's just the fact that you got
Well,
these cowards and politicians that just don't. They just don't. They don't
they
have
don't care.
ideology. They don't took idolatry worship to a whole nother dimension. That's what we're seeing in
Yes,
this in
but
the
it's
politics of the
bipartisan,
world.
though.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, yeah, but nothing like what the current president done, where
It is
was
true.
yeah.
He is doing an extra good job at it, and there's no way to put lipstick on a pig on that one there. I mean, he's definitely taking it to a whole different level. And one thing I've said before is I think between Obama, Biden, and Trump, this is one thing they all have in common with the cult of personality presidencies like they've had. And then again, Biden was more or less the anybody but Trump cult of personality. But all three of them combined, if you look at the time frame and mirror it with or sync it up with social media and the advent of social media and the new media and everything else, I think you're going to see a lot of similarities there to where they actually, and their team and all of them around them has maximized getting inside the heads of the citizens in a whole different manner, whether it be TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever social media platform you're using. I think psychologically we're at a different stage now than we were for the other presidents before Obama. And I foresee the next president just taking it to the next level.
We got the law, Greg, and the court system is where we give aggregate humanity, aggregate morality, because you have some people don't believe in
Well, I know
God and
that.
the agency, and we
But
gotta
a lot
have
of
a
public servants
constitution.
don't, yeah, but a lot of them don't
Well,
follow it, and then
well,
there's no
well,
enforcement of it, and a lot of these politicians, I mean, public servants or elected officials, whatever you wanna call it, have been skating around it, and now granted, Trump is doing it in a whole new form, but, I will give him that. I mean, he's the first at a lot of things, but before him, people have been finding out shortcuts and finding loopholes and doing all kinds of issues here to take advantage of the system in a full measure for decades. And people have not paid attention to it, mainly because I don't think people have had the access to pay attention to it or the ability to like they do now. And even when Obama got elected in '08, then 11 and 12, you saw all the advent of just one or two platforms. Now you see 8 or 9 or 10 platforms at full throttle level. Then you throw AI in with it and the ability to exacerbate and distort and everything, every single thing you read on social media. Then you dovetail that in with the leadership. You got a wild mess. And the law is very important and the courts are very important to enforce it. That's true. But people's perception of it or their articulation of it or their semantical editing of it online basically distorts messaging and distorts, a lot of what's going on, in my opinion.
yeah, well, again, I think that honesty and truthfulness has to work, particularly in the law with judges and lawyers, attorneys,
Well, it
and
does.
anybody involved with the system of law, criminal and civilly. We set the bar and the standard of what we feel is corporately, accurately, as society was moral or decent, and it was fair and equitable because you have to have legitimacy and credibility in the legal system. If you don't have no credibility or legitimacy in the legal system, you don't have a system. You don't have nothing but
I
chaos,
agree.
and no one wants chaos and crazy. No one legitimate wants that. I mean, you have a certain segment of population
But
do
we've
say
seen
that.
but we've seen a lot of the legal system here distort the legal system here lately.
Yeah, it's always a legal system that will work as great as we as the people uphold people and make them and hold them accountable for doing their job. And we have to have the courage to stop being so partisan. Well, we can't stand for what is right and righteous rather. Rather than going with the cliche of a party doctrine. And that's really what's killing this country is that people are so hyper sensitive and partisanship to they
They
don't
are.
care what's right and wrong no more. It's just whatever the party says, they go with it. That's the problem. God give us
Yeah.
all a brain to think and to use. We should think and use our brain for ourselves, not be so inundated with other influence that we just follow anything and everybody.
Yeah, I agree, and that's where I'm worried about, and I'm not just picking on the legal system, I'm picking on all the different systems, like, whenever people say that Trump had 34 felonies, he had a lot of misdemeanors that were turned into felonies and retroactively and everything else in that case, and out there in, I think DC is where it was at, for New York. And so, I mean, we see a lot of manipulation of the legal system, manipulation of the media system, manipulation of the messaging, and the court of public opinion, where most of these politicians live, because they're not really worried about the court of law, because they don't really see their day coming in front of a jury or a judge ever happening. Because in order to do that, you'd have to have a insurmountable amount of evidence here to even get a district attorney or a state attorney or a federal U.S. attorney to file a case against you and to get a judge to agree to take the case. I mean, and that doesn't happen with elected officials very often. I mean, it's a very small percentage of the overall legal work out there. And so basically the next step is a court of public opinion. That's where all the messaging and I know I'm not trying to like just ignore what you're saying or beat a dead horse, but that's where the social media and the AI and the messaging and the online platforms and all that really comes in, is because, the way they're semantically separating and cherry picking their words, or, basically somebody will say something and then they just pick out the phrases that they like the best. They edit out the other parts. And basically that's the entirety of what they said. And they negate the negatives or the useless part that they did say. And so the entire manipulation of messaging and manipulation of whether the words are being used by these politicians in the court of public opinion is basically skewing a lot of different things, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say that I would agree to a certain extent with that. But let me see what let me show you. This is Kingdom Revelation. Let's talk about what how God sees certain things.
Exactly.
Now,
Let's do
the
that.
Bible says in Revelation 21:8, it says, "But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and the whoremongers and the sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall not have their part in the lake of fire and brimstone, which is the second death." Now, this verse lists specifically all liars among those who will face eternal separation from God. To be separated from God is hell. Hell is the place when you don't have God in your presence, or the presence of the Spirit of God. That is hell. That is your real hell. People misunderstand of the Bible. They think hell is some kind of abstract place. No, hell is the separation from God. That's why I gave that scripture, Revelation 21
Exactly.
and 8. And also, but let me give people another scripture. First Timothy chapter 1, verse 10 says, "The sexually immoral, men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine." I say that, Greg, because we have too many people out here, even people that make themselves their own clergy, their own preachers that God didn't call them, and they come up with new doctrines in their own vain kind of world, of trying to influence people to follow them and do what they want, rather than do what God said. I'm gonna go with God because He's the Creator, He's Lord, and He knows all things. And so God is God, and He doesn't need any help by being God. So let's let Him be God, let Him be ruler, and let Him be sovereign.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there has to be a God-like kingdom of character, honesty, integrity. But when we're dealing with the law, when we're dealing with each other, with our brothers, our sisters, there has to be a force in spirit that is greater than self. There's so much selfishness going on in this society now. There's no accountability, and we got to have that in government.
Exactly.
We got to have it in our relationship. We got to have it in our job, our employer, our employees. Honor, integrity, and goodness has got to be part of our character. It has to be part of our character, because otherwise, the devil is going to just be running wild with his demonic, wicked self.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
but
Whenever
let,
people
let
take their eye off the ball and they take their eye off that direction, then that's when everything really starts to go wild.
and but let me quote the judge. The judge said in this 56-page opinion, like, the judge said, the judge also referred one of the president lawyers, Alejandro Brito, to the Florida bar for potential disciplinary action. And the judge limited the ability of a second lawyer, Daniel Epstein, to practice in the Southern District of Florida. The judge said that this case was brought for an improper purpose to gain the imprimatur of judicial legitimacy for a settlement that had no viable basis in law or fact. Then the judge went on saying
Right.
some In summary, the fact before this court demonstrate there was never adversity between the parties. There was never a case or controversy, and there was never a question as to who will prevail. Bottom line is that, Greg, anytime you have a litigation, civil litigation, you got to have a party in controversy that's adverse so that you'll know what you're asking the court for. And it has to be of a legitimate purpose. And that so-called settlement was never of a legitimate purpose. And so I'll give you a final comments on that before we make another transition to a new era I want to go to.
No, I think you out legalized me on that one there. I'm not that deep in the legal narrative there. I just know that everything needs to be done right.
Well, let's get back to the next issue, which is ICE. Last week we were talking about
Nice.
ICE killing this Mexican national
Yeah.
man that had been there, Lorenzo Arenado, if I butchered his name, I apologize. But anyway, Mr. Lorenzo was living in the state of Texas for a long time. And apparently ICE had a warrant that really wasn't for him, but he ended up dead. And it's the very same thing that just happened this afternoon today, where ICE has killed another person by gunshot in the state of Maine. And so that was developing to before we came on. So what we're seeing, Greg, is ICE shooting, killing people, and it's always the same old basic fact that they try to claim some self-defense, but the witnesses doesn't
Okay.
agree with ICE. So again, like
That's a dangerous
why this whole
job. Okay. That's, okay. I mean, if you look at the amount of killings or amount of shootings that ISIS, and I'm not saying any of them are good. I'm not defending any of them, but it is law enforcement, and it also, I mean, what they're doing is they're trying to. I mean, I don't know the scenarios. I don't know the different circumstances. I'm not going to defend any ICE agents or attack any ICE agents because I don't have the information on any of it. But what I am going to say is that's a dangerous job on both sides. It's dangerous to be here legally and to have people after you. It's also dangerous to be going after people who are here illegally. And so, I mean, and that being said, I think we talked last week about the prioritization of ICE and how I think that they are prioritizing these individuals on the streets who are not hardened criminals or violent criminals incorrectly. And I think that they should be lower on the agenda than the ones who are already in prisons or in jail or so on and so forth. But that being said, whenever they talk about law enforcement shootings and back and forth, I mean, a lot of times, I'd like to see how many ICE agents are being attacked or defending themselves, and I don't think that's on record anywhere. And I like to see how many cops are being attacked that defend themselves, but also at the same time, I also want to see about how many other needless violence acts and killings and everything else are going on throughout the nation that everybody has forgotten to talk about. And they use the ICE issue or law enforcement going after certain individuals as a distraction of their shortcomings in several other areas like Chicago or Atlanta or New Orleans, where random acts of violence, random killings dwarf, how many ICE shootings are happening or how many, if you actually look at statistical analysis of how many shootings by ICE agents or law enforcement agents happen every year or even every month or every week, you compare it to how many are civilian against civilian, black on black, black on white, white on black, Hispanic on Hispanic, so on and so forth, humans against humans. I mean, you're going to see that we have a violence issue here. And it's a lot of times you're putting violent people in uniforms, probably not the best situation. A lot of times you have violent people who are responding to people who are violent in uniform. That's not a good combination. And so, I mean, you have a no-win scenario here, and as tragic as a lot of it is, I think most of it needs to be looked at and analyzed on a case-by-case basis. But that being said, I do think that they should be going after and deporting or going to apprehend the individuals who they already know who they are by their fingerprints through the fingerprint database and everything, so they don't have to be curious on who they are and to identify them as hardened criminals, not check bouncers for people who just, cheat on their taxes, but I'm talking about, drug dealers and human traffickers and killers and pedophiles, which I'm pretty sure there's still quite a few of them still in the prison system that have not been talked to yet or removed yet. And how come we are worrying about individuals and ICE agents are worrying about the individuals on the streets who are not causing any harm to anybody, as opposed to the ones who have already caused harm to a lot of people, and we're paying for to have our tax dollars for them to get 3 hots in a cot and medical care and everything else? I'm just perplexed on that one.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned is that
I put a lot there. Sorry.
for decades, Jesse Jackson and many other civil rights leaders have been trying to get Congress, which Congress has the authority to make these police, law enforcement, FBI, all all federal, through the FBI. Statistically, they could do that if Congress didn't exercise their willpower politically. It doesn't matter if you're Democrats, Republicans, the bipartisan, they're both in blame.
Yeah.
We don't know
But
how
but have
those
they asked
statistics.
have they asked for the stats of the cops being attacked? I mean, I know they've asked for the stats of how many individuals the cops have attacked or police officers have attacked, but how many is there any statistical data on how many of them were doing it in self-defense as a result of being attacked?
Well, the thing is that you can get both of those if they would agree to codify a law,
Yeah,
which they refuse to do that. That's the problem. And I think the reason why they don't want to do that because they don't want the statistics to be known just how many killings there really are. So it everything is happens on a case by case basis, and that's the reason why. But Congress has it in the purview to make that statistical thing a reality. But I don't think they really want that data to be fully known. Honestly, I really don't. Because they
I don't
refuse
either.
to make that data mandatory. And they could do that through legislation, but they refuse to do it. So to answer your question, currently get both of those statistical data could be preserved if FBI data Congress passed the legislation and mandate the FBI do that. But it's discretionary. So the FBI doesn't have to don't keep those statistics.
That's interesting. Maybe somebody needs to though.
Well, but no one's gonna actually have the data for the police organization, particularly citywide, state to state, but the FBI. You know what I'm trying to say to cover all the different states. So since the
They have
FBI
data on
doesn't
everything else.
it's not mandatory, it's just discretionary. So it's there in their discretion. So you don't know the true hard number of law enforcement or killing folks or saying that they did something. But what we do know in individual cases, a lot of lying going on when they're saying that the police said that they were, they thought they were trying to do this and that, but it's inconsistent with the video. I literally dealt with that for a decade when I
Exactly.
do a lot of criminal law,
I think if
where
everybody had a
police
body cam video, you
yeah,
wouldn't have to
yeah,
worry about it.
yeah. And then when they're in most a lot of cases you have where the body cam is a law that makes to tell the police you're supposed to have it on. And the minute the cop turns it off to do negative stuff. So again, some of this is law, but some of it require people to do the
Right.
right thing. You have to do the
Well,
right
it
thing because
does.
if the law requires you to have your body cam on and you're a police officer, you turn it off and you beat somebody up and then you turn it back on and you say, "Oh, he ran to the wall," or "He hung himself."
Right.
So we got to use a little common sense with this too. But you have the law, but there has to be a common practicality to this too. You see, so
I agree.
but anyway, so let's transition, Greg, to our last issue, which is the Power of God pocket section. Recently, Conor McGregor, he had retired for about 5 years. He's been out of MMA action, but Conor McGregor had an MMA fight, a second fight, rematch against Max Holloway. Now, the Conor McGregor was paid $15 million base minimum. That doesn't include the sales of I guess the video sales for the event and marketing, all that kind of stuff. So the gross or gross receipts, whatever. So that normally in that contract. So in other words, he got a 15 million minimum. Then his opponent,
Not
Max
bad.
Holloway, got a $3 million minimum. Right? At the end of the day, Greg, Conor McGregor allegedly his knee blew out in 69 seconds, ACL. So his ACL, was blown out of damn 69 seconds. So he got a
Right.
$15 million payday for 69 seconds. Now, and for the people who paid to see that, to see to pay for the fight, the pay-per-views or whatever. And I'm like, if you training for this, it's just, I don't know, 69 seconds of your ACL go out. And
Yeah.
if you really saw it, it was like,
That's a good payday.
yeah, that was a great payday. So 15 million for 69 seconds. You can't beat that with two sticks, correct?
No, you cannot. That's very bizarre.
Very bizarre. And I think from the fan standpoint, I mean, this is the whole nature of the vagueness of celebrity because the guy hadn't fought in 5 years, and here he is coming on the scene in a rematch. And he dictates the proportion of the fight first, and he gets the 15 million minimum guarantee. And
Right.
Max Holloway got the 3 million. But yeah, I'm like, I mean,
Kinda like the Mike Tyson fight.
exactly. But Lee Tyson knocks people out. Here, he goes and knocks himself out in 69 seconds. He tried to kick Matt Holloway, and he just quit like that 69 seconds. So it's just really bizarre for the fans and people
Yeah.
who pay their good money to do all that. But it's not a lot to say about this because it's
It's
just
pretty sad.
strange.
Yeah, I mean, somebody should be investigating the text messages and the emails around him and his personnel around that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. It smells, Greg. I don't understand it
Smells bad.
because it seems like to me if you're training like you're supposed to be training, you should know if something's not right. If you have to push your
Right.
fight back, but you wait there and 69 seconds into it, you try to throw a kick and all of a sudden your ACL go. I don't know. It's just hard to imagine that, and I think it's worthy of some type of investigation from the proper whoever
I
licensed that
agree.
performing in because this is just beyond bizarre and not right when you got legalized gambling and all this stuff going on and people paying their hard-earned money to go
There's probably
pay for
millions
this.
and billions of dollars on the line with that.
Yes, yes, yes. So, but
We don't encourage gambling on this show.
yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyway, though, but that's pretty much gonna be a wrap for this show tonight. We want to thank all of you for joining us, and like I said before. Welcome you to comment, to like, and follow us. And again, Kingdom Revelation, this is a people power movement here. We want the
It
voice
is.
of God to be heard in the earth. We got a lot of deep demonic activity in this earth right now, but we believe that it's time for the people of God to be intentional, to be uncompromising in our faith and our standing in kingdom authority, and exercising that to bring light and salt to the world that seem to be forever lost. And we are the light through Christ who shine within us and in our actions and our doing, not our talking, but our action and our doing. And we want to tell you to be a best version of you. Be intentional, be what God called you to be. The best thing you can do is be the best godly version of you and be intentional about what God has purposed you to do. And so, again, thank you, Gary, for joining us tonight. And
Thanks for
any
having
final
me.
thoughts?
No, that's, I mean, it seems like a little bit of a shorter show here today, but yeah, I mean, I think you hit everything right on the head here with everything we're going to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, God bless everybody and walk in power and always
Definitely.
rock on. Good night, Greg.
Good night, sir.